Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Legislative Republican Vision Series. I'm Senate Republican Leader Trey Stewart, joined here today with my good friend, Senator Dick Bradstreet from Vassalboro. Thanks so much for joining us, Dick.
Well, thank you for having me.
So, Senator, you are a veteran in the legislature here, a veteran on some of these really critical issues, including housing. And that's what I want to talk with you about here today, is what's happening in housing. What are some Republican ideas and solutions to this problem that is widespread across Maine?
Well, thank you for that. Yes, my background is in housing. I was a modular and manufactured housing retailer for almost 30 years here in Maine. So I'm quite familiar with what goes on in the housing industry. What we're looking at now is trying to control costs of what it takes to build a home for Maine people, not only single-family homes, but in multifamily housing as well. We're looking at some of the regulatory burdens, some of the code requirements, some of the permitting processes, trying to make a clear delineation between who has authority over certain areas. Right now, it's kind of a hodgepodge. Builders that I talk to, I still am in contact with many people in my industry, as well as traditional home builders, stick builders. They keep telling me that it's very difficult to even price a home in Maine now because of the changes in the codes, let alone the cost of materials and the problems in getting labor.
So as a Republican, I always am skeptical of when government is the solution to problems. I actually think more often than not, government is the problem in a lot of ways. I think that is applicable here in housing. But let's talk about regulations and red tape and the codes that you mentioned a minute ago, because I think this is probably where Republicans and Democrats differ most, is that we believe that government is a part of the problem and is adding to those costs, adding to those requirements, which are making it harder for people to get into new homes. And Democrats usually are the ones that are piling on the regulatory burden. So let's talk about that for a minute.
Currently, right now, in the industrialized housing, we have a manufactured housing board that regulates that industry, the manufactured and the modular industry. Licenses are required in that industry. As opposed to in the traditional stick building industry, they're not required. We're looking at maybe relieving some of those licensing requirements. It's a pretty steep hill to climb for a lot of people who are familiar with construction, but maybe not as familiar with that particular type of construction. We think we can expedite the process that they need to go through, where they can start utilizing that to build homes in the state of Maine.
Regulations really seem to be one of the things that's driving costs the most for new builds in particular. So tell me a little bit about what that looks like.
I recently went to a project in Westbrook, I believe it was, where they were building a multifamily, and the home is a modular construction. It had been inspected in the plant, and from what I understand, the city code enforcement wanted to disassemble part of it to look for themselves at some of the components. Driving up the cost, the time, and not to mention the frustration it caused the developer and the builder. I talked a little bit about code requirements. I think some of the energy requirements that we've adopted in the last few years have really not been looked at from a cost-benefit basis. You can't save money on a home that hasn't been built, and you can't build a home if it's not affordable. And if the codes and requirements make that home unaffordable, it will never be built.
So in a nutshell here, the biggest priorities for Republicans being critical investments in our workforce that are strategic and make sense in the long term, getting rid of red tape that we don't need, that's only making it more expensive to build houses in Maine and get people into new houses, and then working with the private sector instead of opposing them, like what you're seeing happen in Portland and New York and other places that are run by Democrats.
Yeah, that's basically it. So in short, we need to keep the government out of the way as much as we can. Let the people who are qualified and trained, have done this thing before, allow them to do it without all the obstacles that government puts in place. Obstacles cost time, time costs money. Money loss is money that has to go into a building project, which shouldn't happen. We can make things more affordable here in Maine if we're allowed to do it. Let us do it.
Senator Bradstreet, it's great to see you as always. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on the Republican vision for what housing looks like in the state of Maine, Republican solutions to that problem, and what our future can hold under Republican leadership.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. You know, we can get a lot of things done for the state of Maine if you just give us the opportunity to do so. That's what we need.